Okay, thanks a lot for coming to the session. I'm Sachin Bhakar. I work for an energy company, and I'll be talking about inner source. So Justin, some time back, shared a lot of insights about inner source, but I will be giving more of, let's say, a high-level overview in the most simplest form. It's a 15-minute session, so there won't be any deep insights, but just a high level. Uh, Just a second. Okay. So yeah, I have the simplest agenda. We'll start with what is inner source. We'll move to why, and then we'll figure out the how. The how is the difficult part. So we're just going to see it from a high-level overview, and just food for thought. How is the food for thought part? So what is inner source? So inner source is you can say that it's more of an younger sibling of open source. Came into existence at a much later point of time. It walks on the same path. It follows most of the same way of open collaboration, open communication. And the quality is achieved through a separation of contribution. So it's just, Justin just said a lot of things, but few of the things is that I'm going to repeat is that a lot of collaboration is going to happen within the company. It will imitate how open source cultures drive in the open source ecosystem. And we are just going to replicate all that. So inner source is nothing fancy. It's just whatever is happening in the open ecosystem, we are going to replicate the same within our company. So the code will not go out. So that's why there is no requirement of license. There is no requirement of CLAs. All those legal obligations are not required. And that's why inner source can actually accelerate development, can actually improve developer experience. And I'm going to talk a lot about in the how, in the why part. So yeah, I mean, it's 10 years, it came 10 years later, and the guidelines are just not really in place for most of the companies. So most of the developers, what they want to do is that they want to publish the code and put it into production and get done with it. Documentation is something where developers will shy away from it. So as long as the code is not well documented, others will not be able to contribute to it. Others will not be able to understand it, and they will just not be able to realize the power of that particular code. There are different inner source principles, the best practices that will also lack. And the last part is inner source rarely get support from management, high-level, middle-level management, because they don't see the value. And that's why it's really important to realize the how part. Okay, so now we'll talk about the why part. So most of the companies, and I would say high-level management, will always listen to consultants or the consultancy companies. So Gartner has been talking about it a lot. And as you can see, just follow it doesn't look green, but so the green part, this is a Gartner hype cycle for software engineering year 2022 and 23. And what they're saying is that inner source is the innovation trigger for software development. And it's really at the beginning of it, and it will not plateau for the next 5 years, at least not for the 5 years. And this is really, I would say, an innovative element for any kind of development project. This one's from McKinsey, another consulting company. They are doing a lot of work in helping other technology companies how they can improve their developer experience. So McKinsey is not calling it inner source. McKinsey is calling it as developer experience. And so as you can see, this particular chart, developer is in the center of this particular developer experience. So what McKinsey is actually trying to do is that they have realized that inner source is built around a developer, around the requirements of the developer, and that's our main subject. It will require reusing existing capabilities, existing code. The developer experience program needs to be evangelized. Everyone should be made aware of it, that there exists a certain kind of inner source or developer experience program. There should be a dedicated team for it, who's promoting it, who is managing it. Because without that management, without, I would say, deciding a flow of developer experience, it will not really work out. And yeah, the last one is decentralization of code contribution. So anyone should be able to contribute it. So if the code is open to anyone, so I mean, those who have worked in large MNCs, you'll realize that most of the code repositories, they are kept as private within the team. It is not made available for other people who are not part of the team. And that reduces any kind of contribution that it can get. So that's why it's really important to open the repository, at least for all the internal teams. Documentation is the next step. And from there on, any kind of conversation that is happening on, as Justin just showed, is that all the conversations were happening on the GitHub page. So anyone who's coming to see the code, who has seen the documentation, can just follow the conversation and can contribute. So these are the 5 things that will happen if a company is aiming for developer experience, for a good inner source program. It will attract talent, primarily because all the talented individuals wants to do is that they want to work on multiple kind of problems. They just don't want to stick to one project. They don't want to stick to one problem statement. They want to work on different problem statements and want to contribute on different projects also. There will be consistency, quality. So yeah, security and compliance has been mentioned by McKinsey, because the code is all internal. So one need not to be worried about license, whether it's Apache, whether it's GPL, because it's all internal, it's all proprietary. Again, here comes the tricky part in the third statement, is that if, let's just say, if it's a joint venture and the GitHub code repository company A and B, then there can be certain licensing obligations, because in joint venture, there will be an IP agreement which will decide that how the IP will be owned by the 2 companies. So it can get tricky in case of joint ventures, but if it's just one company, it's a solid program. Okay, so this, like the why part should make all the engineers, or I would say all the high-level management executives should feel like this kid. They should get excited. They should see that, okay, now we have realized the importance of it. How can we actually do it? How can we actually implement it? I would say this is the most important slide of my presentation, because this actually talks about how one can implement inner source. So there will be a vision, there will be a strategy, and there will be a roadmap on it. So vision will give us, I would say, the highest level of overview, why we are doing a certain thing. So we want to leverage code reusability. We want to make sure that no engineer write a line of code that has already been written within the company. So the code reusability should be maximized. Developer experience should be improved. So no one wants to redo the work. No one wants to reinvent the wheel. If I would say, if a project is already available within a company, it should be made available for other teams, other projects. It should be a part of core strategy. So I agree that it will be implemented by engineers, but until unless it doesn't come from a top-down approach, until unless it's not evangelized by leaders, it will really not be a successful part, because every engineering team, they listen to their line managers, and their line manager listens to, or to their skip level managers. So if they are promoting an inner source program, if they are saying that, okay, you have to document it, you have to make all your repositories open to other engineers, it will be done. So again, it's in the beginning, it will require a push from an upper level management, but later on it can become part of a culture, and then it will just happen on its own, that it's just going at a very steady pace. The last point is that it will attract talent, because any talented developer will get to work on different set of problems, and that's what they want to do. They just don't want to stick to one problem, stick to one project. Strategy will further, I would say, narrow down the vision to a more, I would say, solid action items. So one of the key features that is required to implement an inner source program is to have an inner source team. So it can be one individual, it can be 10, 15 individual. It will depend on the size of the company. There should be an alignment between research and development, legal and business function. So again, this will be part of the first few conversations that will happen when the inner source program is introduced. But later on, they need not to be in the loop. It will just be a conversation between different engineering teams. And the last one is to implement the vision, which will be a part of the strategy, is to have frameworks. So it's required to have certain kind of documentation, processes. So again, it can be part of every team's KRA, that as soon as they develop the they create a new repository. It should be public. I mean, at least for internally visible for all the people, and the documentation should be in well shape. There was one talk before the lunch, which was about how to make people excited about FOSS, and I can't recall the name of the speaker, but he actually compared a FOSS project with a movie title, and it actually made sense. Is that when we see a trailer of a movie, we get excited. We get excited because it is they are telling a story in a way that it will make you excited about the project. In a similar way, all the projects that are created internally, they needs to be well documented. There should be I would say, something to make people excited. And the last one, which is the roadmap, which is like the grassroots action items, is that there should be a tool or a dashboard to discover code. Now, let's say the inner source program is in place. Teams are actually using it. And if one of the engineers wants to find a project or wants to find a code, how he can do so. I mean, of course, GitHub repositories will let them do so, but if there is a dashboard, if there is a tool in place, in action, that can actually help them. So this will require a further, I would say, next level of automation, where code will be labeled, projects will be labeled with their functions, what the project will do, so that it will be easy for any developer to discover that particular code. The next one is code should be available, which I have been talking about from the beginning, is that no developer should, no project team should keep their code as private. And the last two are the basics, is like if the documentation is well in place, it will be easy to participate for any of the engineer. So what exactly is we are doing here is that we're just making a project accessible to all the engineers within the company. So yeah, I mean, this was, I would say, my session. I try to keep it very simple. Considering the 15-minute slot, there was no point of going into the deep down strategies, but I would be happy to answer if there are any questions. If not, then I think I'll conclude. Okay. Thanks a lot.